Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurur Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmatacharya Paryandam Vande Guru Paramparam Sthavagaya Dharmasya Sarvadharmasya Rupini Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namah Gajananam Bhudaganadisevidam Gabitthajambhuvalasarabhakshidam Umasudam Shogavinashakaranam Namami Vigneshwarapadapangajam. If we look at the human goal, it is very clear that we all are striving for happiness. Not only that, we don't need to suffer in life, or we really want to have an end of suffering and strive continuously for making us happy, striving for happiness and bringing an end to suffering. That is where all our endeavors are centered around, right? Or maybe in more Vedantic term or more Vedantic terms, Paramananda Prapti. That is what we all are looking at. And no one wants to suffer. Atyantika Dukha Nivritti. In whatever way, we don't want Dukham to come. Correct? Every endeavor that we do, be it doing something for the body or even for eating, we always want to have Anandam and we don't want to have Dukkha. Correct? And we also know that implicitly beneath whatever we do in our life, because we do a lot of things at the Karma Mandala, we also know that we have a thought of I exist. Right? Beneath all these things, beneath whatever we do, we always have a thought, underlying thought, that I exist, I do this, I am enjoying, I am getting benefits. But this I, we are confusing with the real I. What I am referring is at the plane of the body, mind, intellect, senses, so called as the small I, or we can call it as the ego. What we are always doing is we are confusing this small I with the real, we are confusing the capital I with this small I. The small I is at the plane of body, mind, intellect, sense, that we collectively call as the ego. My body, my capabilities, my skills, my unique attributes. So that is where we always relate that self with this ego. But one more thing, we are always clear that the so-called awareness is not changing. See, that is where we always go back or go for and relate what are the changes, how things changed, how I perceived when I was at that age about the things, and how the perception got improved or changed. We also know that there is some unchanging aspect in our life also, though we stereotype the self with the ego, but we also know that there is an awareness which is unchanging. And we also know that our mind, the emotions undergoing in our mind, the different experiences that are coming in our mind. Sometimes we are happy, sometimes we are sad, sometimes angry. So these are the different coordinates I want to set for today's discussion. So though in reality, we know that there is an there is an unchanging awareness. There is awareness which is not changing. But we ourselves are always getting limited due to the influence of the body, mind, intellect, senses, the world that we interact. If you see the changes happening in the world, something coming, going, getting modified. So that is one side. Other side, the mind, body, intellect, senses, etc. There are also limitations at those planes. For example, body, we do have a build. We cannot go beyond that, right? For example, someone will be looking for more height where that is not possible. So that is where at the plane of the body, mind, intellect, senses, there are limitations because those cannot go beyond certain things. The other side, the kind of challenges coming from the world in terms of, the what is the right word, appearing, sustaining, and then not able to see things. That is how all the names and forms are structured. In fact, our nature, what is the nature? The nature is the unchanging awareness that is infinite. It is big. But due to our ignorance, the ignorance coming from two aspects. One is basically the limitations of the body, mind, intellect, senses. The limitations that we have in the world for the names and forms. So what is happening is basically, though we have an infinite possibility in all of us, but due to this ignorance, we are getting confused. What is the confusion? I am a small entity. I have a lot of limitations. That is where we are doing. Humans, what we do, we know that this body is going to exist for some time, certain period of time. Otherwise also, if you see a human life of 100 years, half of the time goes as a night, and 1/4 goes as the Balya Kaumaram, and 1/4 at the end goes as the old age. And what is limited there? The limited time is very less. That is where everybody is going for a rat race. Everybody is trying to grab whatever is possible. And again, whatever is possible for what? For making me happy. In this short term. In the form of different possessions, be it money, fame, etc. That I can get. This is what the reality is. The world is going in this direction. And that I am not saying that this is not the way people should think, because this is how everyone will start thinking. This is how it is designed. And only few will realize that, yeah, there is a big possibility in me. Am I designed for getting into this rat race? Even if I get into the rat race, will I be able to get perfection? See, what is a perfection? The happiness, the Atyantika Dukkha Nivarti and Paramananda Prapti. At some point of time, few will start thinking, yeah, is this the true purpose of my life? Even if I try to grab things in the material world, will I be happy? Will I make those sustainable? So that is where the jnanam helps. Only when the jnanam comes, one will be able to think, is this the purpose of my life? So obviously, when we do more reflection upon that one will understand that, yeah, this cannot be. So our mind is also undergoing. If you see the over a period of time, how the mind is also undergoing changes. There are three phases, we can say. First, the mind will have the dvaidam, the duality. Though I feel that awareness, but in my daily routine or in my daily normal life, mind is always oriented towards the outside world. Though there is a feeling that I am unchanging awareness, but the kind of interactions and the kind of nature of the mind in terms of the interactions with the world, in terms of the kind of responses coming from the world, what happens is basically the mind will stick towards the exterior aspect. I cannot identify myself with that unchanging awareness, though I know that my potential is this unchanging awareness. That is what the first phase of the mind. Then, with knowledge, with maturity, mind will understand that the truth that is pervading everywhere cannot be different truth. It has to be a single truth. For example, if you look at the Srishti, human beings as a whole, irrespective of the caste or creed or religion or the country of origin, you can see the kind of commonality. You can see the kind of homogeneity and heterogeneity. The mind will also realize that among these homogeneities and heterogeneities, there are something common that is underlying this. So, again, the next level, I am awareness, and this is this same awareness which is existing in everything. But still, due to the influence of the world, this will never become practically possible to get embedded into the mind. Though theoretically this will be understood or not. The third phase is through this knowledge, through the continuous Sravana, Manana, Dhyanam, through the different life experiences, through the help of scriptures, through the help of wise gurus, our mind ultimately will understand that the same consciousness is being reflected in everything that you see. Because if you start deeply thinking, there is a rule or a law which is pervading, be it the earth's rotation, sunrise or sunset, the birds, the rhythm that you see, one will understand that there is a same consciousness force which is reflected in everything. Ultimately, the same consciousness is the reason behind the matter. This is the kind of depth one will reach. As I mentioned in the beginning, the Chatushloki Bhagavata, Anvaya Vyadiragabhyam Ityat Sarvatra Sarvada. What is the underlying reality behind the matter principle? Through Nirandara Sravana Manana Dhyanam, the mind will get the maturity. We can say at this point of time, the mind is in unison with the reality. So that is where the state of Tattvamasi comes. You are not different from that. So the mind will become matured, the mind will get purified. These are the phases of evolution. Theoretically also, in the first phase, The reality is same, the underlying reality is same, though I am consciousness, though I am the unchanging awareness, but due to the influence of the mind in the world, that will not happen. This is just a theoretical knowledge. Then out of the Nirandara Sravana Manana Dhyanam, maybe Sravanam and Mananam, the mind will start thinking about, yeah, there is a consciousness force and there cannot be a different truth that is pervading. And later, through the Vijnanam coming out of the Jnanam, and how the Vijnanam comes through the influence of the Shastram, our Parampara, then the Atma Kripa. Ultimately, the one has to start reflecting and thinking. So that is where the real mumukshutvam coming. What is the true purpose of my life? So that is where the mind gets matured enough to understand that there cannot be a different consciousness. That is only one truth. Kshetrajnan is the same. Kshetrams are different. So practically, how will we evolve? Though we said 3 phases, etc. One has to establish or re-establish the connect with the Swarupa, the ultimate reality, which is there in all of us. We need to establish or re-establish, because nothing needs to be invented, nothing needs to be brought in, no new learning has to be incorporated from outside. So that is why I am saying re-establishing or recognizing with the contact with that ultimate reality which is there in all of us. And practically one has to act live. When I say act live, being in the present is very, very important, because the disturbance or distractions happen in the mind due to the past influences. We inherit all those influences from the past and drift from the present and think or worry about the future. This is what the mind is doing always. So don't allow the mind to take the experiences from the past, mix it up and mess the present and future. Because what happens is basically this influences coming from the past will frame new ideas which are not going to be the truth also or the reality. So what happens is basically we are forgetting the present, and if you don't act in the present, ultimately how we can ensure the future? That is what the whole problem is. So mind has to be purified. That is the only way to stay in the present. The purification of the mind only can help to avoid the influences coming from the past and interlink with the future or present. So mastering the restless mind is very important. Indriya Nigraha, Indriya Niyandranam, Mano Niyandranam, Chamam Damam, all those things. Shatga Sambhati. So establish or re-establish, live in the present, remove the disturbances, remove the restlessness happening in the mind, grasp the knowledge. Because the Veda Vakya or the Guru Vakya, Vedantic knowledge. What is the Vedantic knowledge? The truth about yourself. Not only that, beyond the aham, the idam padarthams are there everywhere. Everywhere what you see is idam. Idam meaning the names and forms, all the manifestation. Understand what is the reality. The reality is Brahman, and that is aham. Idam is all about Maya, the influence in the form of names and forms, and Maya is also part of the Brahman. The relationship between the Aham and Idam. Aham and Idam. So this is very logical. Establish or re-establish with that truth which is already there as the ultimate reality in us. Stay in the present. Remove the restlessness happening in the mind. With the core knowledge about the reality, about Brahman, about Maya, about the truth. What is the true nature of myself? Once you reach there, then the next logical step is the liberation. Then the next logical step is liberation or the realization. So now the issue is basically mind is always connected with the external objects. And mind is always short-term focused. Maybe we can say in a modern way, mind is always opportunistic. Opportunism is something, what will I get in the short term without doing or without putting much efforts. And mind is always attuned in such a way that from the external objects only I will get happiness. Now with Jnanam, we have to train the mind that happiness from the objects are momentary. And this is not a stereotyping, because this is the reality. Happiness from the objects are always momentary, because objects itself will change. The priorities of ourselves are also changing. Then how we can make those happiness coming from the objects as a permanent one? This is very logical. These all are momentary, these all are short-term focused. These happiness will last only for short duration. So now what we have to do? We need to find out what is the source of happiness that we are looking for, because everyone wants Atyantika Dukha Nivritti and Paramananda Prapti. And to a great extent, we all know that this permanent happiness will never come from these matter objects. These all are, momentary. So now, let us look into our organs of perception. Let us take mind itself. Can mind be the source of happiness? Can mind be the source of happiness? Mind is referred as a monkey, right? Chapalada or chapalya, the kind of what is that? The flickering or fluctuating nature of the mind. Mind cannot be steady, because by nature mind interacts with the outside things, and mind will always get a tendency to think that this is right, that is right, this is right. Every now and then it becomes erratic, it becomes unsteady. So then, can the mind be a source of happiness? We are also saying that the mind has to be purified. Why? Because the erroneous nature of the mind has to be taken away. That is why we are saying the purification of mind. Say an unpurified mind cannot be the source of happiness, because that mind is like a monkey. It is always unsteady. So it is also logical that that mind cannot be the source of happiness, even if it's a purified mind. See, at that stage, one will realize that I am beyond the mind. So where the mind gets energy, so at that plane, the wise person will ignore the mind and see the reality behind the mind. But this is at a phase 1, I am saying, the step 1, where we feel that I can have happiness from my mind. But logically, if you see, mind cannot become the source of happiness. And again, the things that are dealt by the mind, for example, the external objects, can they be the permanent source of happiness? So it is very clear that neither the external objects nor the mind can be the source of happiness. Let us go a bit deep into the deep sleep. We know the Sushupti Avastha. What we get? We get bliss. We get blissful sleep, I would say. There are no perceptions, no problem of the mind, no thoughts coming, nothing is disturbing, no feelings, no ego also, because in sleeping, while we sleep, we don't sleep with that ego, or maybe we are not expressing, or we cannot express. It is not we are not expressing, we cannot express. We cannot express our feelings, we cannot express our thoughts, we cannot express the mental conditions, we cannot expose those things when you are in the deep sleep. That is why we are getting a blissful sleep. Or if you are preoccupied with thoughts, will we be able to get sleep? Please tell me. So ultimately in the deep sleep, we are enjoying bliss or happiness, because there are no objects to be experienced. That is why we are getting this blissful sleep. So now tell me, where is the source of happiness? Are you all with me? Where is the source of happiness now in this context? Is it within, or is it with the body, mind, intellect, senses, or the interactions that we have in the world? What is the source of happiness? Is it within or outside?
Inside.
It is inside, because it cannot be body also. What is there? What is present in deep sleep? Tell me. What is the feeling that you can realize in deep sleep? Tell me. Are you realizing that, yeah, the so-called body is sleeping or the so-called mind is sleeping? What is sleeping there? Are you possessing those identities in the deep sleep?
Forgetting the identities.
You are forgetting the identity. See, that what is present in the deep sleep is you, the innermost core. No other layers around the innermost core is active in the deep sleep. You, the innermost core, only is present in the deep sleep. And you, the innermost core, is the true I, the real nature. And that true I is Sada Chida Ananda. That true I is the real, because that I is experiencing the deep sleep. That is why we say after waking up, yeah, wonderful sleep for 5 hours. Without any objects, you are experiencing the deep sleep. It means you are the real. You have not changed while you sleep. And you are the Chit. You are the awareness also. And you are the Anandam also. You are the bliss. You are the happiness. So Sat is the real, and that is existing all 3 senses, right? Even in your awakened state or dreaming state, can you deny that you don't exist? Sat is the inner core. So now Chit is the awareness, and awareness, if you need to be aware of something, if you need to be aware of the people who are around, if you need to be aware of the transaction, tell me, do you need a subject to be aware of the objects? You need a subject that is going to be aware of the objects. So now Chit is awareness, and at the plane of Chit, or when we say that as a characteristic, subject and object both are needed for the awareness in a person. Or in another way we can say, awareness need a subject, correct? And awareness need objects also. There needs to be objects and there should be a subject that is experiencing the objects. So this is the chit. First is sat, real. You exist every time. Chit is the awareness. You are aware of the objects. It means what? You are the subject who is aware of the different objects. Now coming to the third, Ananda. Ananda is the bliss. And from the deep sleep, what we understood? We understood that Ananda is the essential nature of our inner core. Can someone deny this? So now, inner core is Anandam, inner core is awareness, and the inner core is always present. And the inner core is the true source of happiness. Because that is what we are experiencing in the deep sleep. So what is happening is the ignorance is blocking us. Ignorance is blocking us from realizing the true source of happiness. In fact, we are sitting on the top of a box where inside the box it is full of gold or jewels or ornaments, etc. And now sitting on the top of the box you are begging. We are begging. And someone who has got an idea of what is there inside the box asked the person, hey, what is there inside this box? Nothing. I have not seen. Now you open that box and see the wealth. Similarly, you open the deepest cave of our heart. Hridaya kuhara madhye kevalam brahma matram. Find out through knowledge that who truly are we. So this is basically the knowledge, and that wisdom has to come from where? Opening the cave of the heart. Who can do? Who can do? Can someone come and open the cave of your heart? Can someone from outside do that? Outsider can tell, yeah, there is nidhi, there is wealth, but who has to open that door? Ourselves. So that is where the sustained effort has to be there from all of us. What are those self-sustained efforts? You need to be having the bhakti, the surrender, and nirandara vijindanam, self-enquiry, self-surrender and self-enquiry. And constant alertness of the mind, because the mind has to be alert. The mind is always having a tendency to, go wrong and, fetch things that will confuse. So constant alertness is the price that we have to pay to make our mind pure. And again, how happy or sad is all proportional to how I think. There are people who take things very light. Maybe the circumstances or situations could be same for, say, 4 people. But let me ask a question. Is there a difference in the attitude of a person in terms of the thinking to make a perception about happiness or sadness? Please tell me. Or a pain that is undergone in a family, and the same set of family members, are you able to see the difference in the perception of happiness or sadness by the people in the family? Yes, right? So it means the level of happiness or sadness is determined by how you think. Point number two. And the happiness is within all of us. The only problem is basically the ignorance created by the mind. And again, at the plane of mind, one can have a control about how will I determine the perception of happiness or sadness. And what happens in our real life is we are always trying to change the outward situations, the worldly things. We try to change others. We try to bring improvements from the world, because we always feel that the joy comes from the outer happenings. So now Vedanta is saying that the glory is unlimited. You might have seen some brands like Unlimited. Right? Glory is unlimited and it is within us. So now live intelligently. Transform the negative perceptions to positive perceptions. Live intelligently, because the glory is within us. So our mind has to be elevated to fulfill this unlimited glory. And this is a journey, as I mentioned, the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And in this journey, we need to understand that we are undergoing expansion in our life. When I say expansion, moving away from the petty things and understand the real purpose, understand the higher goal in life. That is where the expansion comes. Or the expansion will come in another way also. How can I be peaceful and happier without any of those things? This is again, we can say it's a boldness of a person, right? Without those things, how can I be peaceful and happy? This is the expansion. Expansion is also in the form of what is the higher purpose? What is the real goal in my life? How I can elevate myself. How I can reach towards the true purpose of my life. And the wise will always experience the things. See, when you are in the world, you cannot run away, right? And every experience, they use it as a stepping stone for the fulfillment. When I say stepping stone for the fulfillment, those attributes which are coming from the material world, they don't use it, they don't depend. Irrespective of the success or failure, irrespective of the joy or sorrow, irrespective of the pain or pleasure, everything is structured in such a way that everything is geared in such a way that attaining the higher goal in my life is the true purpose. And bring out the best, bring out the full potential in me, because I do have that. This is the kind of self-confidence one has to create in life. In Vedantic term, it's called as the Jivan Mukta Avastha. A yogi. With that, let us get into Atmabodham. I think up till 48th verse we covered last week. Correct, yeah, 48. Yes, 49th verse. Om Jivan Muktastu Tadvidwan Purvopadi Gunams Tyajed Satchidananda Rupatvad Bhaved Pramarakidavad. The characteristics of a yogi or a Jivan Mukta. A man of, what is the right word, enjoying the inner freedom. And inner freedom in this life, inner freedom through this body, through this living body, is described here. So, who is a Jivan Muktan? Jivan Muktan is the one who has got the inner freedom by living in this body. So, how the Jivan Muktan gets the inner freedom? Through the acquisition of self-knowledge. Becomes free out of ignorance while living in this body. And Jivan Muktan is a person who has got elevated mind, because that person is clear about the true self. Before reaching to that plane, you can say that old ubadhis, so called as the body, mind, intellect, sense, still those are there, but in the phase of evolution, the ubadhis, the previous ubadhis, I can say, the body, mind, intellect, senses, where that person identifies, say, himself or herself due to the influence of Maya prior attaining the self-knowledge or getting the Surupa Jnanam, now understands that I am not this Ubadhi, I am beyond the Ubadhi. Here there is an analogy used, Bhaved Bhramara Kidavat. So you must be knowing this story of a worm transforming to a wasp. In Malayalam, this is a very famous story. So a wasp brings a worm from outside into the nest as a food for the baby. And stings the worm to make it not movable. And this wasp is always troubling the worm. And this worm is helpless. This worm is fearful. And again, the wasp will come and prick the worm, and it makes a lot of pain, fear. So the worm consistently looks at the wasp. Ultimately, the worm thinks that he is also a wasp and ultimately gets converted into the wasp. It gets, what is the right word, metamorphism, to become a wasp. There are different stories, a tiger, or there are different stories like, not the tiger, anybody is able to recollect that?
Lion cub.
The lion cub, correct, not the tiger, correct. So this is also there in some of our scriptures. So here the worm is metamorphizing to become a wasp. See, what is the underlying tattvam here? when one consistently starts thinking and realizing that I am not the matter, I am the spirit principle. For me, there is no need to associate with the matter, because that is always changing, and even the body came from the matter realm and it has to go back. This is a continuous negation of the matter. When I say negation of the matter, not giving importance to the matter and appreciating the consciousness principle, or appreciating the spirit principle and not giving more importance to the matter. So such a situation, we are referring it as the situation of a yogi or a Jivan Muktan. What Jivan Muktan does? Jivan Muktan meditates upon the divine nature of the self. So what happens? When you start meditating continuously upon that self, the egocentric limited individuality will get dropped. Basically, what happens is the worm existence will get dropped and the vast existence will come into picture. Meaning, the Jiva Bhavam will get dropped and the Brahma Bhavam will come. The Jiva Bhavam will get dropped, and ultimately the yogi will reach the state of existence itself. That is where the analogy is used here. So that true self itself is the life principle. So that is where knowing is becoming. Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. What is happening in a yogi or in a Jivan Muktan is basically the deconditioning of the mind. Or we can say the recalibration of the existing habitual behaviors. Freeing the mind. Freeing from the notions of mental or energy or the physical conditioning. So, deconditioning of the mind with the knowledge and the continuous dominant thought about the true nature and not giving importance to the matter. So ultimately, the deconditioning of the mind happens. The recalibration of all the tendencies will go, or the recalibration will happen and the negative tendencies will go. The mind will get purified and mind will start knowing the reality behind the mind. All the assumed personalities will get removed. And what happens? Satchidananda Rupatvad Bhaved. So ultimately, the yogi or the Jivan Mukta will realize the Sada Chida Anandam, which is the true nature. And the realization happens inside, and with that realization, the Jivan Muktan will execute the karma in the world without getting affected. Sloka 50. Tirtva moharnavam hatva ragadveshadi rakshasan yogi shanti samayuktaha atmaramo virajate moharnavam tirtva. So a yogi who is a Jivan Mukta, after crossing the ocean of delusions and having killed the monsters such as likes and dislikes, is united with the peace. That yogi becomes an Atmaraman, will start or comes to revel in the true self. So what is the implication here? The implication is all about the realization of the true self and establishing the joy within, establishing the knowledge is first part. And knowledge is about what? Knowledge is that Sat Chit Anandam is the true nature of the self, and enjoy the situation of joy of being with that truth. Sarve Ramanti iti Rama. Right? If you see Atma Ramo Virajade. Atma Raman. What Atma Raman is the person who is what is the right word? Who is the one or who reveals everywhere in all hearts. The continuous state of non-duality is experienced by an Atma Raman. I think you all know this song or the verses. Atma Rama Ananda Ramana Achyuta Keshava Hari Narayana Bhava Bhayaharana Vandita Charana Yadukula Bhushana Rajiva Lochana Adi Narayana Ananda Shayana Sachidananda Satya Narayana Atma Rama Ananda Ramana Ananda Ramana. So even Bhagavad Gita says in the third chapter in the Karma Yogam, Yastu Atma Hridireva Syad Atma Truptascha Manava Atmanyevacha Santushta Tasya Karyam Na Vidyati. So that person shines within or experience the joy within and see the equanimity in life. Ragadveshadi Rakshasan. So the yogi is the one who has crossed all this delusion, who has crossed all this Ragadveshadi, meaning Ragam, Dvesham, etc., and reaches to the state of Shanti Samayukta, and ultimately Atma Rama Virajade, able to experience the inner joy, become an Atma Raman, become an Ananda Ramanan, become Achyutan, become Keshavan. Atma Rama Virajate. Shines, ultimately that person will shine as a free person, driven by the equanimity. Verse number 51. Bahya Nitya Sugha Saktim Hitvatma Sugha Nirvrudha Khadastha Deepavat Swastaha Swandareva Prakashade. So this is basically saying how that yogi or a Jivan Muktan lives in this world. So one will ask whether this Jivan Muktan will behave weirdly or how. I would like to know, right? So this Jivan Muktan is self-abiding, derives energy from within, derives happiness from within, and relinquishes attachment to the illusory external happiness and gets satisfied with the bliss which is derived from the Atman, and will shine like Khadastha Deepavat Swaste, will shines inwardly like a lamp placed inside a jar. Khadastha Deepavat Swasta Swantareva Prakashate. The self-abiding Jivan Muktan relinquishes these kalangams, external issues, which comes from the material world depends on the bliss which is derived from within and will shine inwardly like a lamp placed inside a jar. So the real freedom comes from within, the real happiness comes from within, the real dependence comes from within, self abiding, and at the same time operating in this world, relinquishing all the attachment and the illusory happiness which one gives value to that. This Jivan Muktan won't give value to those things but still execute the jobs without attachment, without having any dependence on these external things. Otherwise, also shining inwardly with this knowledge and with this dependence. So in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asked this question: what is the or what are the traits of a yogi or a Jivan Mukta, or in Gita's term it is Sthita Prajna. Arjuna asked this question: Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha. Second chapter, 54th verse, 54-55. And Bhagavan says, Atmanyev Atmana Tushta Sthita Prajnastaduchyade. The one who finds happiness from within, the one who derives the dependence from within, one who finds satisfaction in self, is a man of steady wisdom. Such a person is called as the Sthita Prajnan. Verse number 52. Upadhistadovi tadharmai Upadhistadovi tadharmai alipto vyomavanmuni sarvavid mudavatishted asakto vayuvachared. Muni upadhista api tadharmai alpidha vyomavat sarvavit api mudhavat tishted asakta vayuvat chared. So here the question again is how a Jivan Muktan acts towards the world. See, this Jivan Muktan will still have the upadhis, so called as the body which is already existing, mind, intellect, senses, and those are having limitations. Correct? So, though associated with these upadhis which are already there, and they do have the limitations, a yogi, a man of contemplativeness, will never get impregnated with those qualities which are coming from the limitations of body, mind, intellect, senses. This person who is the knower of all will exactly live like an ignorant or a dumb person, unattached with these worldly things, and moves like the wind. See, very, very profound. We know that Jivan Muktan is still having the Upadhi, and at the Upadhi plane there are a lot of limitations for the body, mind, intellect, senses. Through this knowledge, the yogi or the Jivan Muktan will never get the qualities of limitations from the Upadhis. And through the knowledge, the person is very clear that Aham Brahmasmi, I am the knower of all, will act like an ignorant person but still does the job in the world without any attachment, like how the wind moves. So this is the this is the way that a Jivan Muktan lives in this world. So the very simple way we can say, the active center of a Jivan Muktan is not ego. The active center of a Jivan Muktan is the consciousness. Active center of dependence of a Jivan Muktan is not the worldly objects. The active dependence of a Jivan Muktan is the true self. That is why in this verse is called as Moodhavat Tishtayat, behaves like a great ignorant person. It is not ignorance, it is choice born. This is operated, or the Jivan Muktan operates with knowledge. I should never get identified on the objects. My active center should not be the ego. My active center should be the consciousness. My active center of dependence should be the true self. And that is where the old powers that I need can be derived. Though I do have limitations at the plane of body, mind, intellect, senses, and I don't depend on those body, mind, intellect, senses. For me to be happy, I just use all the upadhis and moves like a wind, where there is no attachment or affection towards the worldly objects. So in Srimad Bhagavad Gita in 2nd chapter, we can see this verse, Ya Nisha Sarvabhudanam Tasyam Jagadi Samyami. '69, yeah. Ya Nisha Sarvabhudanam Tasyam Jagrati Samyami Yasyam Jagrati Bhudani Sa Nisha Pashyato Mune. So, when it is night for all beings, the wise person is awake. And when all beings are awake, that will be a night for the Muni or a sage or a Jivan Mukta. So here night meaning, when someone gives too much of importance to names and forms, the Muni or the Samyami or the Yogi will not give too much of importance to names and forms. So what the Muni or Yogi will do? Muni or Yogi will recognize the consciousness behind the names and forms. When you say names and forms, when people operate at the limited ego, Muni will operate at the expanded consciousness level. That is where when everyone sleeps, the yogi is awakened and vice versa. When everyone gives sheer importance to names and forms, yogi will see the reality behind the names and forms. That is where this contrastness is coming. So, how a yogi operates, that is what we are seeing now, verse number 53. Upadi Vilaya Vishnau Nirvishesham Vishen Munihi Jale Jalam Viyat Vyomni Tejas Tejasi Vayadha. So what happens when the Upadi, see, Jivan Muktan will also have the Upadi, such as the body, mind, intellect, senses, and all the related possessions needed for the transactions which are needed for that body. So on destruction of the upadis, the yogi who is totally absorbed in the Vishnu. Here Vishnu is referred as the all-pervading spirit, like water in water, or space in space, and light in light. So Jivan Mukta's departure, what happens? Finally, it merges into the, or it dissolves into the absolute consciousness. So how doll made of salt, when it is put into the ocean, similar to that, the Jivan Mukta ultimately gets dissolved into the absolute consciousness. So why? Because the Jivan Mukta is not having any unfinished prarabdha karma, because the Sanjidam Agami, through knowledge, everything is destroyed, and prarabdham is exhausted. Now the physical body, the mind, prana, everything goes back to Prakriti, and there are no vasanas to get fulfilled. So that is where the final dissolution of the Jivan Mukta, the Vilayanam happens into the absolute consciousness. So here Vishnu, we have to understand, Vishnu is the reality, the true nature. So when the limited consciousness reaches to a state of expanded consciousness, what happens is basically Vishnu is called as Sarvam Vyapnodi Idu Vishnu. It is unlimited consciousness. It is all pervading. You become that. You become one with that. So that is the state of a Jivan Muktan, when the Upadhis are getting distracted or exhausted. So realizing the Vishnu as own self, with that knowledge and with that clarity, the Jivan Muktan ultimately will get merged into that. And much before that, the identity, the individual identity is lost in Jivan Muktan. So then what is there to stand out? Ultimately, it's the merging of the consciousness into the unlimited consciousness. It is becoming one with that. So what happens to a Jivan Muktan when the Upadhis gets distracted? So what happens is basically it becomes the consciousness becomes one with the universal consciousness. There is no difference, and there is no necessity for the for a janmam to happen, because Sanjidam Agami through knowledge is exhausted, is distracted. Prarabdham also got exhausted. There are no pending vasanas to get fruitioned or fulfilled. That is what the Upadhi Vilayad Muni Nirvishesham Vishnu Vished Jale Jalam Yada Yom Niviyat Tejasit Tejaha Vah. So ultimately gets merged into the universal consciousness.